Catholic League President Bill Donohue thinks that people should ignore the Pope on climate change. Now, before I get into that, of course, first I want to show a clip of Rick Santorum talking with Chris Wallace about his comments about the Pope's upcoming encyclical about climate change.
The church has gotten it wrong a few times on science, and I think that we probably are better off leaving science to the scientists and focusing on what we do, what we're really good at, which is theology and morality.
2 points. If he's not a scientist, and in fact he does have a degree in chemistry, neither are you.
I agree.
And that's one point. And the second point is that somewhere between 80 and 90% of the scientists who have studied this say that humans, human activity contributes to climate change. So I guess the question would be, if he shouldn't talk about it, should you?
That's a good question. It's a fair question. Now, Bill Donohue is actually going to respond to this. And I wanted to show that to give sort of the context of this discussion. So Donohue is going to talk about this, and what he's going to do is that he's going to downplay first the education of the Pope to make a case of why we should ignore his message on climate change.
What do you make of Chris Wallace there?
Well, Chris is under the impression, and I'm not blaming him, it was put out some stories last week. It was erroneous information that the Pope is a chemist. The Pope is not a chemist. The Pope does not have a master's degree in chemistry. The Pope does not have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. The Pope has the equivalent of a 2-year community college degree. They have a different term for that over there. In other words, 2 years out of high school. So let's get rid of this idea the Pope is a chemist. He's not. Secondly, what Rick is basically saying is this. When the Pope speaks on faith and morals, that's when Catholics pay attention. That's the authority. Once you get beyond that, can you speak to other issues? Of course you can speak to other issues. But I don't care whether it's Pope Francis or his predecessors or his successors someday. Once you get outside the domain of faith and morals, be careful. And be careful particularly when you get into the weeds and get very specific.
Now, the Pope might not be a chemist, but it seems like he studied a little bit more science than Bill Donohue. Now, I love that he points out that, well, you can't get more specific, because if you start to get more specific and you start to get in the weeds on things, then obviously you're going to be wrong. Now, this is actually awesome projection, because it's exactly what he does. He's like, I can't get specific on issues, because then people are going to point out where I'm wrong. So I have to be super, super vague. That's kind of what his interpretation of religion is, and to be honest, what a lot of religion is. You can't get focused. You can't get specific on anything, because then people can point out that your positions don't match up to actual facts, logic, and reason. So they have to be vague. And so he's saying, well, you can't be specific on this. You got to be super vague. But anyway, as I said, despite being more educated on science, as a lot of climate deniers, Bill Donohue still says that we should just ignore the Pope when it comes to his encyclical on climate change. Which, by the way, the Pope isn't actually claiming to know all about climate change. What he is saying is that maybe we should follow, at this point, scientific consensus of 97% of all the world's climate scientists that agree that climate change is man-made and it's happening, that we should actually listen to that from people who are experts in the field. Now, Bill Donohue doesn't agree with that, but that's not even the most ridiculous part of his argument.
For example, are we God's stewards? Are we supposed to take care of the earth? Of course. That's out of the Old Testament. It's out of the New Testament. It's totally unobjectionable. Now, we might get a little bit more specific, but the more specific you become on something like this,
it gets.
Well, what happens is Catholics will scratch their head and say, well, he's a very nice man.
Right.
Again, Catholics will offer him respect, but in terms of accepting what he has to say as guiding their thoughts, no, it's not going to happen. We know, for example, that even on issues as the death penalty, for example, or on gun control, or on helping the poor, there's a lot of different issues where Catholics can disagree on. When it comes to things which are non-negotiable, let me give you two quick ones: abortion and euthanasia. It's not my opinion. It's in the Catechism. It says these are intrinsically evil. No one has ever said that air pollution is intrinsically evil, okay?
Right.
So people need to get up to speed on this.
Yeah.
People need to get up to speed on what I think is intrinsically evil. And that doesn't include dirtying our land and air. But we are supposed to be good stewards of the earth. Yeah, but that just means destroying the earth, essentially, by, of course, taking all the natural resources and, you know, releasing tons and tons of carbon in the air and polluting the waters and land, the rivers, seas, etc. with all of our junk. What? We're being good stewards. That's ridiculous. No one has ever said that air pollution is intrinsically evil. No, but it's not exactly very healthy. You see, air pollution, no, it's not evil, but it can kill you. Well, that doesn't make it necessarily good either. It's not like you should sit by a coal plant and be like, smell that fresh country air. But don't worry, it's not going to hurt me. It's not evil. But abortion, that's terrible. This guy is ridiculous. And I thought the Pope was supposed to be infallible here. I thought you were supposed to listen to the Pope and everything he said. But now he says, well, look, when it came to the last Pope, Benedict, or as I like to call it, Emperor Palpatine, everything he said, absolutely. Catholics, like Bill Donohue, were like, yes, yes. Hate the gay community more. Yes. Pope is infallible. What are you doing questioning the Pope? Now, when it comes to Francis, especially talking about the poor, you heard what he said about the poor. Not Pope Francis, but Bill Donohue. Oh, when it comes to the issues of, of the poor, how we treat the poor, well, there's a lot of debate. You could disagree with the Pope. But on issues of abortion and euthanasia, that's where you can't disagree with the Pope. But wait, it all comes from the same source. It's supposed to come from the Bible. Right? And the Pope is supposed to be infallible. Well, if the Pope says, hey, maybe you should take care of the poor and the needy. No, Catholics are allowed to say, no, fuck you. I'm not taking care of the poor. But when it comes to edicts on abortion, yes, we must not have abortion at all. It seems like he's cherry picking. And that's what people like Bill Donohue do. That's what a lot of these people do. These people aren't religious. These people aren't actual Christians. These people don't believe in their bullshit. They cherry pick it so they can use arguments that they agree with and then dismiss any argument that they don't agree with. And on the issue of climate change, there's a lot of people out there, very powerful people in powerful positions within the religious right, that don't agree with climate change because they're getting a lot of money and a lot of support from science deniers and, of course, fossil fuel industries. In this case, you got to follow the money. And also, now, to identify as a Republican, as a conservative, as a true conservative, or social conservative even, well, you have to be against the whole idea of climate change. It's part of their political identity now. I think that's why you can't really talk to these people. Once they've assumed that as part of their identity, it is impossible to shake them from it. And it's a good thing that social conservatism is losing. There's been recent polls on that. How a lot of people are no longer identifying as socially conservative. And on a lot of issues, even people who identify as an economic conservative aren't as economically conservative as they thought when you go issue by issue. Now, that's good news when it comes to the environment. I just hope that it continues to that the issue of the environment continues to actually become more important. Now, right now, it's even for liberals, it's not as important as it should be. But when it comes down to it, climate change is one of the more important pressing issues that we have. the thing is that people can just push it off because it's a long-term issue. But trust me, we're running out of time on that. We have to do something, and people like Bill Donohue are not helping.